Hello and welcome to Vertex Solutions and welcome to part 3 series of our Windows Server 2022 training videos. So this is your host Muhammad Farooq. In our previous video we discussed about domain controller Active Directory domain services, and we showed you how to install Active Directory domain services in Windows Server 2022. What are the initial configuration you need to do, and also we discuss about uh, enabling the new feature Active Directory Recycle Bin. It's a very handy tool, especially when you do a mistake, and you can always, instead of recovering from backup, you can recover the objects from this Active Directory Recycle Bin tool. Now let's get started. If you like the channel, please click on like or subscribe. So additional domain controllers, and why do we need those? Nowadays, as the technology is evolving a lot, we need to make sure our infrastructure is highly available all the time. So if one server goes down, it could be a physical server or a virtual server, we need to make sure user can still be able to log in and get authenticated. So the pretty, like, the major advantage of using additional domain controller are, of course, the high availability, and also in case of disaster there's a recovery you can do. So when you add additional DCs, you can it creates a copies of primary DC, all the objects to the additional domain controllers. It also minimizes the downtime, and as I discussed, mentioned, DC always replicate any changes to each other for up-to-date Active Directory copy. Now let me give you a quick design diagram, a concept. So for any time, so let's think we have like two offices, and so we have two offices. Again, I'm going to give example Toronto and Dubai, and we have one domain controller here, another DC here. So let's name these DC01 and DC02. And let's give a name DC03. So normally when the user log in, so let me make diagram for a PC. Now when the user logs in, let's say to a Toronto office, it sends the request to DC1. Let's assume for now we have DC1. DC1 make sure it's the right user, authenticate and authorize the user based on the group policies. So what if this DC goes down? The user connects, is not able to get authenticated and not able to get the resources available in the office. So what we do, we add another domain controller. It's a separate machine. We're gonna follow the same procedure by creating a server, and then we're gonna install Active Directory domain services, and then we're gonna promote that as an additional domain controller. And once we do that, it will replicate the copy between each other, and both DCs will see each other and make sure they are up to date. They always talks behind the scene and make sure their objects are replicated and fully up to date. Now the reason I drew Dubai site is, let's say you have a site-to-site VPN connectivity, means you are connected through could be MPLS, could be site-to-site VPN. So the user logs in, DC1 is down, let's assume DC2 is also down. So you have a third DC here in Dubai. They can still get authenticated from that third DC. But the role on this DC we install, we still will follow the same procedure. We install Active Directory domain services, But when we promoted the server as a domain controller, instead of picking a full DC, we will say we pick the option read only domain controller. Read only domain controller just pull the information from the DC in our scenario DC1 and 2, all the information to DC3 and keeps up to date. So let's say if you have users in Dubai, when they connect, they can connect through Dubai and get authenticated from this DC. And even if, let's say, if this link goes down between both sides, still user will be able to log in to their Dubai office and they can access the resources which are available on the Dubai side. If you don't have a DC here, then they won't be able to get authenticated because the traffic will go from the user to the Dubai office, and from here it will go to the other DCs, and if the link is down, they won't be able to connect. So it's a good idea to have at least one DC to the sub offices for authentication purpose in case there is a link down. Now the reason I put the read-only domain controller on the Dubai side is because we don't need to manage the users from the Dubai side. Let's think like we have a team sitting in Toronto, so all the requests goes to Toronto office for the admins or to the help desk to create a user. So normally they create the users in Toronto, and then those objects get replicated based on the site link. After how much time it's gonna sync the objects to the Dubai side. So there are pros and cons, but for now we're just gonna discuss about the overall concept of having a full domain controller or read-only domain controllers. Another example of read-only domain controllers is, let's say if you're running an internet cafe and you have multiple offices all over the world, then you keep 2 DCs minimal to your head office wherever you are located, and then on your internet cafe offices, you just create a read-only domain controllers for authentication purpose. So now let's get started. We're gonna start installing and configuring the first domain controller. The second one, which is our additional domain controller. So this is my VMware workstation. Let's again follow the same procedure. Here we're gonna click next. I will install the OS later. Microsoft Windows. I'm gonna pick latest 2019, even though we're installing 2022. Now here we're gonna pick the location. Our lab location is D drive, where we're gonna keep all our repositories for our training material. It's under training. So I named a folder VSDC02, and I'm gonna save the second domain controller in this folder. So this is my path. I'm gonna say it says it's already have a location with the existing virtual disk because I copied. Remember we initially created the template, so I copied that template to that folder. So it's assuming there's a VMDK file. So we're gonna say continue. Again, we're gonna keep all the settings default. Memory is 4986, 4096, 4 GB. We're gonna use bridge. Now instead of using the existing instead of using the new disk, we're gonna use the existing disk which I have already copied over. So we're gonna go back. So if you see the disk is already copied, so I'm gonna pick this disk. This is a template file, initial fresh install from our template. We're gonna copy it over and then we're gonna link it. So it's creating the machine now. Let's power on the machine. Yeah, that's fine. Now it's gonna start the setup. So is getting Windows ready. So as we already configure this template with the time settings, RDP enable. So we just need to do some basic initial configuration, and the server is ready. And once the server is ready, we will rename the server. Then we're gonna assign the IP address. After that, we're gonna join this server now to our domain controller, which is Vertex Solutions or local. And after joining the domain, we're gonna promote this machine as an additional domain controller. So we're gonna go step by step. So this is just the template coming up as a new machine. We're gonna accept. You see, it didn't ask me to install because it's already installed. We're just gonna reset our password for this machine as a local admin, and we're gonna log in. Okay, so let's send the request. Password. So you see how quickly we have configured an additional Windows server. It took almost maybe a few minutes, and server is ready. I'm gonna say yes. Let's find out what's the IP address. It should have picked up from the DHCP. Now it is asking you to install virtual memories. For now, we're gonna just leave as is. So if you see, it picked up the 10.0.23, which is the DHCP IP address. We can explain what is DHCP and how the new machine gets IP address automatically. So let's first go to local server settings. If you see, the settings are still the ones which we configured initially at Eastern time. Remote desktop is enabled. The first thing I want to do is to change the name. So we're gonna go computer and then change sorry, click by mistake, VSDC02. So this will be our additional domain controller. It's a very good practice to rename and reboot first before you join the machine to the domain. So rebooting the server. Okay, server is back up. Logging in. The next step we will be doing is configuring the static IP. So for that, you can use this command ncpa.cpl to quickly go to your network settings. You can still go through control panel and network settings, but this is how I like to do, quick way. So now the address we will be using for this server is 10.0.04. The previous, our first DC, we configured as 10.0.03. Default gateway is 1. Now if you see the preferred DNS, for now we have only one DC with the DNS role installed. So I'm gonna give the IP address of that DC, which is 03. So okay, so the server has a new name, it has a static IP. The next step we're gonna do is we're gonna join this machine to the domain. So to do that, there are different ways to do it. So what I do normally is just type PC and then properties. Then go to advanced settings, computer name, and if you see these options is work group or domain. So I just pick domain, so Vertex Solutions. So I'm gonna give my administrator username and password to join. So any machine, if you need to join, you have to have a specific permissions. So I punch in the username and password. It's taking a few seconds to get authenticated and authorized. Okay, so I got the error. Let me just check and troubleshoot. I'll be back. Alright guys, there were some minor issues which I have to fix. So let's join the machine to the domain again. Alright, so it says right away, welcome. After joining the machine, you need to reboot the server or a machine. So it's rebooting. I'll stop the video and come back once it's ready. Alright, so machine is up. So let me log in as a domain admin now. Alright, so let's see what the issue is. Administrator. If you see first time when you log in, it always change the name to the local machine. So I have to say one time Vertex Solutions. You don't have to mention local because NetBIOS name is same, Vertex Solutions. So we are logging in first time as the admin to this new server which we created. Now as this will be our domain controller as a backup one, so the same procedure, you just click on roles and features. So give it some time, I think it's still loading up. So let's try one more time adding the feature. So I'm gonna click on add role and feature. Role by default is picking the server. Make sure again the rule is you have to join the machine to the domain first. So I'm gonna add Active Directory domain services, add feature, click on next again, next. Normally it doesn't require a restart if you need to install a role. So it's gonna take some time. Let me pause the video and come back. Okay, the AD features, the roles is installed. So it's gonna ask us to promote. We did this, it's the same procedure we did for the first server as a domain controller. So we're gonna say promote. The only difference here will be picking add a domain controller to an existing domain, because we already have created the 4S, and that 4S we also has created a Vertex Solution domain name. So if you see, it's already picked up. So it's saying specify domain. We already have the domain there. We're gonna add a new domain controller. We go next. I was gonna go and talk to the existing domain controller, and if you see, it already picked up the site which we created, and this is based on the IP address this server is being assigned to. Asking for the password for any DR scenarios. Let's say next. Again, same information, just you can ignore it. Any domain controller, we always try to pick the closest one. So in this our case, we have only one DC. So you're gonna pick the domain controller and say next. It's gonna replicate data from this domain server. So again, we are not going to change the default directory which we discussed in our initial video. I urge, please do not change any of these locations. Click next. It's gonna give you the preview of what you have selected. Next again, and again same information. You can just ignore these errors. Click on install. Now it will install the AD role, configure it, and then it will restart the machine. So once it is done, I'll come back and start from there. I'll pause the video for now. Yeah, if you see the screen now, it says you're about to sign out. You say okay, and it's gonna log out and reset the machine. Let me pause the video, come back again. Now if you see the server is coming back up, booting up now. I'm gonna quickly give you some idea. It's a small tool which I always prefer to install on all the servers. and it's a very handy tool. It's called Background Info. It's a sys internet tool from Microsoft. So let me quickly go and download that tool for you. Yeah, if you go to Google, okay, let me just, so download BG Info tool. Doesn't matter, it's all are compatible. I'm gonna say download, open a file, and then 64-bit. I'm gonna run it. It's gonna ask me a couple of options to configure. So there are a few things you can remove it, but for now I'll just say apply. I think you forget to click on apply. Okay, so if you see the background, now it shows the boot time when the last the server was booted, the CPU, the IP gateway, IP address. I normally try to install this tool on every server, so this way I don't have to go and find out what's the IP of this server, the domain name. If it's a domain controller, it gives you it's a very handy tool. It gives you pretty good idea of what it is about the server machine. Alright, so our backup domain controller is ready, or I would say the second domain controller is ready. Let's go and check the features. If you see the Active Directory users and computers are there, all the components are already installed. We already have Vertex Solutions. Pull up all the data. Now how we can verify quickly, if you see this is the other server, I can run BG Info also on this one too. Let me quickly download that. Okay, so the BG Info, I'm just gonna double click, agree, and then apply. Okay, so this is, you can see my DC2, and let me go to DC1. So this is my DC1. So I'm gonna open Active Directory users and computers. I'm just gonna create an organization. I'm gonna explain you that what is OU, what are the groups. But for now, I just want to quickly create one test OU, and on DC1. And if I go to DC2, open Active Directory domain computers, refresh. Let me just quickly close. So I'm going to open again Active Directory. Just give it a few seconds. It's a bit more, normally it's pretty fast. So let me open that. And here you go. It shows on DC. So let me just prove this is DC2 server, but we created this OU just to make sure the application is working. There's no issues. If you go back to DC2 again and make sure, if you check our Active Directory domain sites and services, so we will see those previous configuration we did on DC1 is already there. See, Dubai and Toronto shows up there. So if we go into servers, you see the second server also shows up there now as a DC in Toronto. So that's it for video 3. We're gonna actually install a read-only domain controller in our next slide. So I would say it will be a video 3 part 2. So if you like the channel, please click on like or subscribe.